Hello and welcome to episode 343 of AvTalk. I am Ian Petchnick, here as always with
Jason Rabinowitz, and welcome to the slowest, longest takeoff roll episode of this podcast. It's going to take us a while to really get up to speed and start talking about the news, but we're eventually going to get there. We're just a little underpowered today, which I really actually feel like is kind of true in personal and work life, but I'll take it as the crossover here.
Jason, what's the perfect registration for an A340-300 registered in Uganda?
In Uganda, UR SLO. UR is the correct prefix, right?
No, it is not.
Oh, no.
It would be 5X APU.
Oh, I get it. Wait, where is 5U? Where did I get that from? UR is close, right? No. Oh well. Oh, well. Okay. 5X APU.
That's okay.
Yeah. Okay, that's good.
Where is UR, Jason? Real quick.
I don't actually know.
It's Ukraine.
Wait. Oh, that's why you don't see it much these days, huh?
That's true. We got that aviation dad joke out of the way. And happy Alaska Day to you, sir.
Yeah, I guess. A happy but also sad Alaska Day.
A bittersweet Alaska Day to you.
Yeah, bittersweet Alaska Day. And if you are wondering what the heck we're talking about, well, the Alaska Air Group today begins single operating certificate with Hawaiian, who is now almost fully assumed as an entity. There's still some more, arguably the biggest piece, other than like clearing it with the regulators, the PSS cutover. But as of today, earlier this morning, the Hawaiian call sign is no more.
Yeah, flight 866 from Pago Pago to Honolulu was the last flight to depart using the Hawaiian call sign, and they got a nice welcome from the tower when they landed. The last flight to land using the Hawaiian call sign was 824 inbound from Tokyo to Seattle.
I'm happy that both of those were really solid Hawaiian Airlines routes. Like Pago Pago and Tokyo are two just very, very Hawaiian Airlines routes. So I'm happy it wasn't like LA to Honolulu or something.
Where there's a lot of crossover.
Right.
So yeah, now they're all using the Alaska call sign, the ASA ICAO 3-letter identifier, but the Hawaiian brand will remain. So they're not getting rid of Hawaiian Airlines as a brand yet. Who knows what'll happen in the future, but that's a ways away still. We've got a great show for you this week. We have a lot of news to get into. Many things have happened, and we have a fantastic conversation with Katherine Moloney, who is the founder of Elevate Her Aviation, a group that is dedicated to getting more young women involved in aviation, something that is very well needed. So we'll have a great conversation with her in just a little bit. But first, we begin in Hong Kong, where the Air Act 747 that veered off the runway, striking a security vehicle, knocking it and the aircraft itself into the bay, that aircraft has now been salvaged and removed from the waters so that investigators can begin their work to figure out what exactly happened and why.
Yeah, lots of people would like to know that, and the answer to that, we don't really have a better idea of what happened now than we did the last time we discussed this. We have some pretty dramatic photos of
we sure do
cranes on barges pulling a parts of 747 out of the bay, at least, but would really like to see what happened here. This is not an airline with a stellar safety record, I would say, but really would love to know what happened, because this was just very, very, very bizarre.
Yeah. So the tail section was the first portion of the aircraft to be recovered. That section, of course, is the one that includes the flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder. So those have both been retrieved by Hong Kong investigators and hopefully will provide some answers as to what happened to the 747 and why it left the runway when it did. Speaking of investigations, we have the preliminary report now from the low overflight incident in Nice. This was Nouvelle Air's A320 overflying an EasyJet A320. The Nouvelle Air flight was arriving, the EasyJet flight was departing, and they came incredibly close.
It is as bad as we initially thought, and the initial
It's
data.
worse.
Oh, it's worse. Oh, that's
It's
not
worse.
good. That's not good. We were properly alarmed, at least we can say.
This is certainly not the case of it looks really bad, and then we find out, oh no, there's mitigating circumstances, things like that. No. At their closest point, the aircraft, each aircraft was 10 feet apart, or as close as 10 feet apart.
Not good. Not good. Sorry, I was distracted by a coworker telling me, unfortunately, seconds too late, since we already moved on from Alaska, that maybe things did not go so smoothly today, and the entire Alaska Airlines and Hawaiian Airlines site is down at the moment. They blame a Microsoft Azure outage.
Yes,
So
yes, that's been affecting
they can't
multiple
blame
airlines.
AWS today, but that's a bad day to celebrate a big change.
Find a cloud service, any cloud service. Yeah, back to Nice. At 20, I'm quoting from the preliminary report here, and we'll put a link to this in the show notes as well. At 21:32:23, TSIMP, which is the registration of the Nouvelle Air flight, flew over OEIJZ, which is the EasyJet flight, which was stopped and aligned with the center line of the runway 04 right. The TSIMP radio altitude value dropped from 39 feet to 10 feet in 1 second, before rising to 24 feet in the following second. And then there's a footnote. The footnote says, this variation in radio altimeter height very probably corresponds to TSIMP flying over OEIJZ.
So this is basically exactly what we initially said when you had pulled the ADS-B data and assumed the drop in altitude you saw was exactly that. Turns out it probably was. And what values did you pull? Did we have 10 or did we have a little more than 10?
So with the ADS-B data,
it's only increments of 25, right?
Right. So it's a wider margin of error. So we knew that the aircraft was below 50 feet. But so that put us within the margin of error of about 10 feet over the tail of the aircraft.
Well, there you go. Spot on. Yikes. Not good. At least this is a case where we could say the aircraft didn't continue on with its day, like nothing happened. They were able to pull the boxes and get some data off of them. So that's good.
So the preliminary report also goes into the meteorological conditions. The French understate the weather as unsettled, which is I think a good turn of phrase into this, translated into English report. But there's also a discussion about the visibility of the runways at night. So the preliminary report goes into the edge light specifications, the centerline specifications, the PAPI, the runway threshold identification lights, where they are, how bright they are. And there's an interesting note about the distinction between lighting of runway 04 left, which was where the Nouvelle Air flight was cleared to land, and 04 right, which was the departure runway at that time. The phrase here is, at night, the runway 04 right lights are much brighter than the 04 left runway lights. And to put that point home, Figure 10 in this report shows an airborne photo at night of the two runways. And unhelpfully, the various levels of brightness are unconfirmed in this image. But if the image shows the runway lightings set to equivalent values, the values are 1 through 4, 4 being the brightest. And it doesn't really matter what the runway values are here, the lighting values are in this image. What matters is if they are equivalent, oh wow, is 4 right so much brighter.
It basically looks like there isn't another runway, which would then lead you to question, why is it 4 right or left and not just 4? But that requires a little bit deeper thought in the moment. But it basically looks like there's a single runway. We actually had a little discussion before we hit record about what the significance of this is. We've seen over the years situations where an airport is converting its runway lighting infrastructure from traditional incandescent lighting, I guess, over to LED. And LED lighting is much, much brighter, which could lead to a situation like this. The report did not note if that was the case, but if that was the case, it could very well be that you have runway 4 left and runway 4 right, both set to intensity 2, and then the intensity of the LEDs is just naturally going to be overwhelmingly brighter compared to the non-LED lights on runway 4 left. We'll be very interested to read the final report to see if that's actually the case, or if the two runways just had different lighting intensity values, which would be very strange because you basically can't see that there's a runway 4 left with the image that was included in the preliminary report.
Yeah, and the other thing that is just confusing to me is that runway 4 left is the primary arrival runway, and 4 right is the primary departure runway. So you would think that
4
you
left
would
should be brighter.
You would think that you would want to focus your energy, if in fact you are converting things, you would want to focus your energy effort the runway that gets used for landings more often. But maybe that's why they didn't do it. Maybe they did the other one first because it was easier to close and switch out the lighting. I don't know.
Who knows? It could be some legacy thing that 4 left was done X years ago, 4 right was done Y years ago, and that the infrastructure was just ready to be swapped out at a different interval. That happens. And that is certainly one of the aspects that the French investigators will be looking at, because we've talked about a lot of close calls in the past on this podcast, especially in recent years. But this one, we're almost in single-digit number of feet from disaster. Yeah, what was the one coming into CDG a couple years ago where they just totally botched the approach? Did we get into single digits on that one or no? I don't think so.
It was close.
But not this close.
I mean, we're at the point where the wheels on this A320 could have been, and very likely were, alongside the tail of the aircraft.
That's a good point that we didn't mention here, at least this week, that the radio altimeter is not the lowest point of the aircraft.
But I think it does.
Does it compute the difference between where am I versus where is the gear? I actually don't know.
This is a good question for our pilot listeners. Email us at podcast@fr24.com with a definitive answer. And we'll do a lookup and post a link in the show notes if I can find a thorough and definitive answer there. Elsewhere around the world, a intense storm has moved through the Caribbean, a Category 5 hurricane.
Understating, as you would say the French report just did, this was one of the strongest hurricanes ever recorded, I believe.
As far as pressure goes, I think it was the 3rd lowest pressure, 5th highest sustained wind speed. I say all that to say the Hurricane Hunter aircraft did an incredible job. And the reason we're talking about them on this particular, in regard to this particular storm, Hurricane Melissa, is that both the NOAA P3 and the U.S. Air Force Reserve C-130 aircraft had to turn out of the storm because turbulence was so bad, they had to go inspect the aircraft.
Yeah, at least as long as I have been following aviation, I cannot recall that having happened. I'm sure it has happened in the past, or at least done.
It's happened individually in the past,
but not to both.
I'm not sure it's happened to both aircraft in the same storm within the span of about 24 hours.
That's wild. Yeah. Whew. We've seen videos, obviously, from the NOAA and the USAF hurricane hunters, and I cannot say, even on like a Category 1 or 2 storm, does it look like a nice ride by any means. But I can't imagine what that must have looked like on board, because I haven't seen any video. But being bad enough that they had to bug out and go inspect the aircraft, that's whew.
I saw a video, and there's usually video and at least still imagery posted to the DVIDS site used by the U.S. Department of Defense. So I'll see if there's anything downloadable from there that we can put in the show notes to give an idea of what we're talking about, because it's, imagine just like shaking a box as hard as you can and having stuff in it and watching it just go everywhere.
And you can't just make a left turn and avoid it, and it's over. I'm sure it lasted a good fair while on board. And remember, they're not getting paid right now. So if you happen to come across a Hurricane Hunter flight crew, be sure to thank them extra this week, because they're going through all of that and they're not even getting paid.
Yeah, the NOAA folks are not being paid right now. Elsewhere, Jason, this is a bizarre one, which I'm sure we'll learn about more as the arraignment happens. But this one happened on the 25th of October, so a few days ago. A 28-year-old man on board a Lufthansa flight from Chicago to Frankfurt stabbed two people with a fork, then tried to fight his way out when he was being detained.
Wow. Clearly this guy had something to prove.
Something going on.
Something going on. Was it an actual fork or was it a spork?
It was according to the complaint, it was a metal fork.
Do they give out metal forks in economy on Lufthansa?
Wasn't clear if this fork was procured from a non-economy class meal, but I don't know where the fork came from. I do know that it was used to stab one person in the collarbone and one person in the back of the head. And then this person tried to fight people as they were being restrained. The aircraft turned back and diverted safely to Boston. This person has now been charged with federal crimes.
Yeah, don't do that on an airplane.
Because of their actions. So we'll learn more and see if there was a precipitating incident or if this was just a case of someone, I don't know.
Yikes. Should we stick with Lufthansa?
Let's stick with Lufthansa.
Stick with Lufthansa. Oh, you know what sucks? In the aviation industry, there is just so much that you have to keep track of between the news, the weather, political unrest, just any number of things that can impact your flight operations and can change at a moment's notice. One thing that Lufthansa seems to have not paid close enough attention to was its overflight rights over a couple of African countries, apparently. And oh boy, did one Lufthansa A350 heading to Cape Town take a massive detour to get around it. Did you see this? What this flight was like?
I sure did. Yeah, so this is not unheard of, where permits can get delayed, approvals can take longer than they should. This relates to the switchover from the IATA summer season to the IATA winter season. And because of that, it's often necessary to resecure rights and permissions and permits.
Right. This was the first operation of this particular flight. LH574, this was October 25th. The last time this particular flight had operated was March 29th. So it had been a good while.
And it sounds like what we're hearing from some folks inside the airline group, things were not processed in a timely fashion. And this particular flight, instead of canceling, they just routed it around, adding about 2.5 hours to the flight.
Oof, they were the lucky ones. Fortunately for them, other flights were not so lucky. I believe Lufthansa flights to Dubai ended up being canceled. The return flight, I believe, from Cape Town was also canceled as someone in Lufthansa operations figured out what the heck just happened. But big oops. But hey, you got to give Lufthansa credit for, I guess, filling up those gas tanks all the way and sending them the long way to Cape Town.
Oof. Well, they
couldn't do that with old aircraft.
No, they've fixed their systems. They've gotten approvals, and the rest of the flights should hopefully go okay, at least for the rest of the winter season.
Yeah, there's just so much in this industry to keep track of, and sometimes stuff just falls through the cracks. This would have been a good transition to one of our other topics, but we'll come back to it. We want to stick with Lufthansa.
Okay, let's stick with Lufthansa. We'll close the show with the other one. Lufthansa has taken delivery of its first CFM LEAP 1A engined A320neo. That's a mouthful of acronyms.
That's a mouthful.
But
there's more.
I was just going to say, but it basically means that Lufthansa, in this tranche of A320neo deliveries, said, we're going to go with the engine that seems to work just a little bit better.
A little bit better.
A little bit, not a lot better, just a little bit better.
It's a big deal for an airline to break commonality in a fleet like that and take delivery of a particular aircraft type with a different type of engine, because that means they're no longer interchangeable, as far as I'm aware. I think there are cases where they're trying to make that a thing. But in this case, that's a big break for Lufthansa. But also, Lufthansa's going to Lufthansa, and Lufthansa loves fleet weirdness. So
I thought they were trying to go less weird.
No, well, this one is weird. It's weird fleet weirdness, but for a good reason this time, not for Lufthansa reasons. So they're not the first, they're not the last to do something like this, but it just shows how problematic the new engine technology is for airlines that even a Lufthansa just says, you know what, give us the other ones. Maybe we'll have better luck with them.
Here's hoping.
It's not good news for everyone. Even Airbus can't get engines because it reported the third quarter financials today and revealed that it has 32 A320s just hanging out without engines at the end of the third quarter, which is apparently down by half.
Yeah.
But that's still 32 airplanes that doesn't have engines.
Exactly. So the numbers are, they're not good, but they're better than they were at the end of the last quarter. So hopefully we're still going in the right direction. This was all part of the third quarter briefing by Airbus on their financial results. They also mentioned, and this was echoed by CFM, that they are still working towards an agreement for engine supply for the 75 per month rate for the A320neo family, which actually moves a bit closer to the target goal because Airbus has just opened the second final assembly line, its Tianjin, China facility. So we're moving in that direction. We're moving back towards possibly a supply chain that isn't extremely, I was going to be nicer and say extremely dysfunctional. But yeah, Jason's word makes sense too. There are, in the words of Airbus CEO Guillaume Faury, signs of recovery.
You know who else is showing signs of recovery? And this might even be bigger news.
Ooh,
it's Boeing.
What?
It's Boeing reporting good, also bad, but mostly good news, because the bad news wasn't all that unexpected. But Boeing, for the first time in 2 years, reported cash positive numbers. Wow, they made money.
Yay!
And apparently didn't lose it, which is great news. They are on track to deliver the most aircraft this year since 2018, which is pretty great. So things, even for Boeing's supply chain, are looking good, except if you're waiting on the 777X, which was officially delayed until 2027.
Yeah, and as part of that delay, they took a $4.9 billion charge. That's billion with a B.
Oops.
Ooh, boy, oh boy, oh boy.
Yeah. CEO Kelly Ortberg says he is, quote, disappointed.
Yeah, I think we all are.
Join the club, buddy. There's a lot of disappointed people over the 777X. Nobody's particularly surprised, but disappointed. I'm not mad. I'm disappointed.
Oh, thanks, Dad. You know, signs of recovery and signs of progress, even if it is 2 steps forward, a few steps back. But hopefully, this is the last time they delay the 777X.
Yeah. Maybe one day when they make a profit, it won't be completely undone by all the charges on delayed programs, because that wasn't the case today.
We'll keep hoping.
So close.
Jason, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to chat with Katherine Moloney from Elevate Her Aviation. Some very interesting things happening with regard to getting young people and young women specifically interested in the aviation industry. And as it turns out, one of the big problems is keeping them in the industry once they're there. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We are now joined by Katherine Moloney, who is the founder of Elevate Her Aviation. She is also a private pilot of both helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft, so all around. Katherine, welcome so much to AvTalk. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So you, as I like to call them, you fly the devil's bird as well as fixed-wing. Which one did you get started on, and how did you become interested in aviation and then become a pilot?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually did it probably, as most people think, the wrong way round. So I actually started with helicopters and then went to fixed wing a little bit later on. But I actually had no intention of being in aviation, and certainly being a pilot was not on my radar until I was about 18. So when I was at school, I probably would have been voted least likely to be a pilot, I think, out of everyone. Certainly, I hadn't thought of aviation really as a career path for me. Which actually is quite funny now looking back, because when I was at school, we actually did quite extensive aptitude testing. And my aptitude test actually came back and suggested I should apply to the RAF as a pilot. And I took that piece of paper and I literally threw it in a bin. I just thought, that's not me. I could never be that person. I could never do that. So it was quite an interesting kind of reflection for me looking back now to see that maybe I did have the aptitude from the start, but just didn't think it could be for me. So anyway, I left school. I went straight to work. I always wanted to go straight to work. I didn't go to uni. And I started working in the warehouse of a flight equipment company, picking and packing parcels, just as a bit of Christmas cover, to be honest. And this is really where my interest in aviation was completely piqued, because I was handling all of these different items every day, learning about aviation, learning about the industry, and I became really curious about flying. I was working on the airport, Shoreham Airport in the UK, and I went to my dad and I said, I'm kind of curious about this. I would like to give it a go. And he said, well, just get a trial lesson. See if you like it. There's no pressure, just give it a try. So that's exactly what I did. When the flight schools next door was a helicopter flight school, I literally walked next door and said, hey, can I have a trial lesson? And they took me up. And from that first moment that I touched the controls, I was absolutely hooked. I loved it. I thought, why have I never thought about this before? It just was so exciting. It felt like freedom. It felt like everything I kind of missed, to be honest. So yeah, that's really where I got the bug, let's say. So I was 18 then, immediately signed up to do my PPL, my private pilot's license, and got that at 19. And I can continue to work at the same company, lots of different roles, from shows, marketing, sales, trade sales, and ended up being marketing director there as well, and learned so much about the industry during that time, and also became a Department for Transport aviation ambassador as well during that time. And yeah, then I latterly went on to do fixed wing, and my thinking behind this was really, I love the industry. General aviation is my absolute passion, and I really wanted to explore as much as I possibly could, and I could see all of the amazing things you can do with fixed wing aircraft, from gliding to microlights to tail draggers to aerobatics, and I really wanted to give it a go. So I did the same thing, walked to a flight school, got a trial lesson, and yeah, was absolutely hooked again.
And you've been flying for a few years, and then you say to yourself, I want other people to experience this, and especially young women to get involved in aviation. So you founded Elevate Her Aviation. And so tell me about the process of getting that started. Where did the idea for that come from?
Yeah, absolutely. And, during the whole time of my flight training, so during both licenses, I never met any other women in aviation. And this is not to detract from the incredible male instructors and mentors that I've had throughout my whole career, because they've been absolutely phenomenal. And, my dad's probably my biggest mentor and has been my biggest support, throughout my whole career. But I did want to connect with other like-minded women, and I did feel like I was maybe missing out on that. So after I got my fixed wing PPL, it literally was like 2 months after, I decided to host an event. So what I did was hired out a room at Shoreham Airport, or Brighton City Airport as it's now known, got a plate of sandwiches and put out an open invitation to as many women in the industry as I could find in all different careers, and said, look, just come, have a laugh, have some fun, and we can all talk. So I was very nervous, to be honest with you. I didn't know who would turn up or if anyone would, but I was absolutely delighted that day when we had 40 women attend. And the event was just wonderful. The atmosphere was electric. All of us were sharing, talking about different parts of the industry, sharing our stories. And I really came away from that event feeling so inspired by the women that I'd met, and thought, hey, this could be a real thing here. Another thing that I'd noticed in the industry was that it's very hard to find good information. There's a lot of great information out there. There's a lot of amazing cadet schemes. There's a lot of amazing scholarships, but that you really do have to dig through the internet to find them a lot of the time. So I also thought it'd be great to have a bit of a one-stop shop for lots of aviation knowledge, and just, where to find things, basically. So I went away, took 6 months and built the Elevate Her platform, which I then launched on my Instagram. And yeah, that's really how the journey began, to be honest. And it really started as a way of connecting people and, just really providing some support and some, useful links and things like that. But it's grown to so much more now, I'm really proud to say.
How has the organization evolved since the beginning and getting the platform launched?
Oh my goodness, it's evolved massively, to be honest. If you told me when I launched it, this is what would happen, I wouldn't have believed you. So I launched it on my Instagram, obviously just me. And now I work with 25 women, mostly volunteers or majority volunteers. And, we're now a global organization. We have thousands of members in over 64 countries worldwide. We've hosted 37 events this year already in 5 different countries. We work with incredible partners like British Airways, Virgin Atlantic, NAT, Cirrus, Technam, and that's been an incredibly exciting journey. We do a huge amount of educational outreach now and lots of research. I think the research has been the most interesting aspect for me, probably, across the board, to be honest. Where we're going with our research and how it's directing Elevate Her as a platform is incredibly exciting. So yeah, I mean, honestly, it's unrecognizable from what it launched as, and it's all due to what an amazing team we have, but also to the women who are our members. The success of Elevate Her is purely a reflection of how many women and girls want to be in this industry and want to stay in this industry as well.
Do you hear similar things from people that are approaching the organization that you were kind of thinking when you were looking for ways to get into aviation?
Yes, we do. There's certainly a few common themes. Again, I am kind of generalizing a little bit here, but particularly we find that with young women, confidence is one of the things that's brought up to us a lot. And I think that's why having a community and a support system is so incredibly important, because you need that group of people around you who's going to lift you up and be there for you when you do have hard days. And aviation is the most incredible industry to be involved in, but it can be really challenging. No matter what career path you go for, whether it's flying, whether it's engineering or ATC, it can be really hard. So we're all about building those communities in all over the world and ensuring people have that support system ready for them.
What advice do you have for people, anybody but young women in particular, looking to get into aviation? I have an interest. Maybe they've taken an aptitude test that says you would be a good pilot or something like that, and they don't really know where to start.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And to be honest, I actually have maybe 2 bits of advice. So my first bit of advice would be just give it a go, just try it, because there's nothing to be lost from trying something. If you try it and love it like I did, then fantastic. If you try it and you think, hey, maybe that's not for me, or maybe it informs your decision about maybe going down a different path in aviation. I think we always say about our research, all data is good data. So go out there, try it, and have fun with it as well. I think it's really important to have fun with your aviation journey. And the second piece of advice is one that I think about quite a lot, and some people may think it's a little bit funny to say, and I do mean it in the most positive way possible, but no one cares. No one cares apart from you. So you may as well go out there and try the things that you want to try and do the things that you want to do, because ultimately you're the only one it really matters to. So you should go out there and have fun with it, enjoy it, and just put yourself out there to try new things.
Elevate Her's been intimately involved with getting young women into aviation, but what about other organizations? What about airlines or flight schools or other aviation companies? Do you see them also being part of that outreach? You mentioned you have some airline partners, but generally speaking, is there more that can be done that you're not seeing, or is there a model to follow that you are seeing?
Yeah, again, a really good question. So I think the conversation now is certainly changing around women in aviation and, the need for diversity in the industry as a whole. So I think now is, the best it's ever been, to be honest. But let's look at the statistics. Globally, only 6% of pilots are women. This is still incredibly low. So yes, of course, there's more things we could be doing. And through our research at Elevate Her, we've really separated this into 2 separate issues. So one is getting girls into aviation, and that comes down to the outreach, the changing of perceptions, which social media, love or hate social media, but it's very useful for that, and those kind of aspects. And then secondly, and actually probably the biggest one, which I would say the industry as a whole really needs to work on, is the retention. So we've noticed that there is a bit of a leaky pipe in the industry. So even though now we have more girls getting into aviation than we ever have done historically, the number's not increasing, the percentage is not increasing. And I truly believe that this is through retention. So when we talk about retention, we talk about things like a really good maternity leave policy. We talk about having uniform that's specifically for women and fits correctly, and facilities that are for women. So even in the UK, we found through some of our research that out of a lot of aviation organisations in the UK, around 16% still don't have women's toilets. So, for instance, I know it sounds like a bit of a small thing, but that obviously is a huge barrier to women staying in the industry. And we found similar statistics with uniforms. So over half of flight schools we found don't supply a women's uniform. And the same with PPE, life jackets, helmets, gloves. Very rarely we find ones that are specifically made for, the kind of female physique and that actually fit properly. And all of this contributes to the message of you don't belong here, which is the message we want to change. And secondly, it stops women staying in the industry. So this is really what we're trying to get down to, because aviation as an industry does not compromise on safety at all. It's one of the things that we, pride ourselves on in an industry. So we need to stop compromising when it comes to women and women's safety coming into the industry too.
Do you see that beginning to change at all, or is it still something that awareness is key here?
I think awareness is still key here. I think we're at the beginning of this journey. I mean, certainly we're doing a lot of research, particularly into the equipment and facilities, and we've not seen any other kind of data surrounding this yet. So I do think we're at the beginning of the journey, but I do think the reception has been brilliant, certainly from all the organizations and, other kind of key stakeholders in the industry. Everyone is now very, very up for seeing the change and seeing where we can make a difference, because I do believe that there's small changes really that could make a huge difference to the whole industry.
That's fascinating to see that it seems like some low-hanging fruit here that would make a big impact.
Yes, yeah, I totally agree with that, yeah.
This has been a fascinating conversation. I want to thank you so much for building this platform, which we'll have a link in the show notes to Elevate Her Aviation so that you can take a look and get involved. If you run an aviation organization and you're thinking, oh, that would be good to have, maybe we can install a woman's toilet, and that would be good to have. I'm a little bit flabbergasted by that percentage that yes. Just doesn't exist.
No, I am using that one as a bit of a showstopper of a statistic. But yes, no, there's plenty more. And you're so right. It's low-hanging fruit. And, if there are any other organizations out there that would be like to see our research is available on our website as well. And we're always more than happy to have the discussion and, see where we can work together.
Katherine Moloney, thank you so much for joining us. Katherine is the founder of Elevate Her Aviation and a private pilot of both helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft. Katherine, absolute pleasure to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely.
Welcome back. I learned a lot in our conversation. I think one of the things that really struck me was that the numbers aren't really increasing. The number of young women or women generally in aviation, they're not increasing, even though we have an increasing number of young women joining the industry, which, as Katherine rightly pointed out, we have a huge retention problem.
Yeah.
So I thought that was,
revealing. Good in that a problem was identified, and now we know it's not just a recruiting issue, that it's not just they need to recruit more women. It's we need to figure out how to actually retain that. And that's a extremely different topic that requires a lot more thought, a lot more figuring out how to stem that kind of loss of obviously a very important segment of the entire world in our industry. That is a crazy stat.
I think the best thing is that they are so focused on research and figuring out things that are helpful, that work, and that can be replicated across the industry. So I think that's a huge thing. And I hope that conversation was as illuminating for everyone as it was for me.
Retention's the hardest part. We're seeing, this is not news, but we've seen the same thing with the air traffic controller recruitment and training. You can bring a bunch of people into that first meeting and get them in training, but actually holding on to those people you've recruited is turning out to be extremely difficult. So it requires a very different mindset and very different approach, not just getting people in the door, but keeping them around is really the trick.
In California this week, the X-59 finally made its first flight. This is the experimental aircraft commissioned as part of NASA's research into quiet sonic booms, call them sonic thuds. This aircraft is goofy looking, and I love it so much. Designed and built by the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works. It is a pointy X-plane looking X-plane, and I'm here for it. The idea is that this uniquely shaped aircraft will create very quiet sonic booms, quiet enough that you can fly them over cities, which is exactly how they're going to eventually test this particular aircraft. So I'm looking forward to that and hopefully NASA proving itself right.
Yeah, interesting. For sure. Wouldn't have expected that this week or really any time right now. Apparently this testing is essential and must go on. I don't think supersonic travel is essential, but I don't make that call, do I?
They were ready to fly and they flew. So this was a not very long first flight from Palmdale to Edwards Air Force Base, where the aircraft will then go on to begin its testing.
What speed did it make it up to? Do we know?
Not fast. This was a does the plane fly?
Oh, okay. It was doing conventional airplane things.
Yes. It is going to work up to supersonic speeds, and we'll keep you posted on those tests. In the UK this week, Eastern Airways ceased all operations. This was the not tiny regional carrier in the UK operating a bunch of regional routes in the Northeast, as well as sports charters for a lot of the UK football teams. So they had been kind of keeping afloat with some wet lease work. And with the loss of that, it sounds like they just couldn't make the numbers work anymore. And unfortunately, they decided to just fold up. Really unfortunate, though. A number of other airlines have stepped in to offer rescue fares, and a number of other airlines have said, "Hey, Eastern Airways pilots, flight attendants, if you need a job, we'll put you at the front of the line because we're hiring." So I thought that was good.
14 aircraft, I believe, in the fleet at time of shutting down. Quite a varied fleet, ranging from BAE 41s all the way up to 4 E190s these days, too. Some of those ended up ceasing operations earlier this month. But man, it just seems like small airlines in the UK just cannot catch a break. It's either your British Airways, BA, or nothing. Which is it doesn't make sense. It's a big country
with a robust air market.
Yeah, so, apparently not robust enough to make it work for anyone. Is Flybe around now? I haven't checked my is Flybe still operating again calendar recently.
Yeah, you need to. They'll give it a go again. I assume at some point we'll have Flybe 4.
This time, though.
This time they mean business. In other, I guess, not great news as far as the reasons for this, Icelandair not doing as well as they want. Years of, quote, unsustainable losses. As a way to stem the tide on that, they have moved forward the retirement of its 767 fleet. All of the 767s will leave the airline by the end of 2026. A target which will move up 3 years from the end of 2029.
That stinks. That's the days of the 767, at least for passenger airlines, are getting dimmer and dimmer. At least back in economy, you hate to see it because there really aren't any bad seats on a 767. At least if you're not like a crazy Russian airline that packs in an extra seat in every row, there are very few of those. But man, that stings. I get it. Those have got to be some of the most expensive aircraft for them to operate compared to the MAX and the 321neo. But yeah, as a passenger, you hate to see it.
Other airlines not having a good time of it, we do our regular check-in with Spirit Airlines.
Oh, I have to check
which
that calendar too. Is Spirit Airlines still around? Yes,
they
the
are
calendar says
still
yes.
around. They are still around, and they are still ferrying aircraft to the desert. Currently, at the moment, let's see if we have any. I have a Flight Radar 24 filter called Spirit Rejections. And that is aircraft that are being flown to various places in the desert, either Goodyear or Marana, which has been taking in a large collection of Spirit A320 family aircraft as the lease rejections come into play. But that's not what we're talking about here today. We're talking about the fact that Spirit now says, hey, a merger might be our best option.
Yeah, going to be a way different conversation than the last time Spirit tried to merge or be consumed by either Frontier or JetBlue. Whatever ends up happening is going to be more picking up the pieces and discarding the scraps, whereas JetBlue wanted to fully integrate Spirit. Got to be a real different conversation now. But Ian, have we tipped the scales of Spirit aircraft parked in the desert somewhere versus planes actually still operating for Spirit?
Not quite yet, no.
Are we going to get there, or is it even close? Not even close.
Oh yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there.
Okay.
Definitely, we will.
Oh, great.
I don't know if that's a good thing, but
No,
we'll get there.
it's not good, not good. But none of it's good news, especially since there are so many airlines that really need working engines and working aircraft, and Spirit's just dumping them in the desert because they can't figure out a way to make it work. I don't feel like that's going to last too long.
I don't think they'll sit very long, to be perfectly honest.
No.
I think Steve Giordano's going to have his hands full moving those to other airlines pretty soon.
Good for him. Business must be good.
Yeah. Let's see. In escalating tensions between the U.S. and Mexico, the U.S. Department of Transportation yesterday ordered routes that were already approved to be disapproved. And they proposed the halt of belly cargo to the U.S. from Mexico City's main airport.
Ooh, that stings.
Some of the routes that will not be permitted to launch include Aeromexico's route from Mexico City to San Juan, Volaris's route from Mexico City to Newark, and a whole mess of Viva Airbus routes from Mexico City's new airport to Austin, New York, Chicago, Dallas-Fort Worth, Denver, Houston, Los Angeles, Miami, and Orlando. One of those routes was set to begin today.
Did it begin?
It did not.
Oh, that sucks.
The other one is set to begin next Tuesday. That was Aeromexico's Mexico City San Juan route.
And are they easily able to reaccommodate on Delta these days? Again, I've lost track of can they cooperate with Delta or not? Has the time elapsed that they have to unwind their JV? And the U.S.-Mexico airline scene is just...
It's getting ugly.
Yeah. To be an airline passenger thinking, yeah, I'm going to go to Mexico tomorrow, and then suddenly your flight doesn't exist because the government said it can't exist, that's rough. Literally the next day.
Yeah. Delta and Aeromexico are still... They've filed a lawsuit objecting to the termination of the joint venture. That is still in progress, so no new news there. In Australia, the first aircraft has landed at the new Western Sydney Airport. A New South Wales firefighting 737 aircraft landed at the airport, marking the arrival of the I shouldn't say first aircraft, first jet because
aircraft.
they've had previous test and calibration aircraft use the runway. But for the first time, a jet has touched down at the new Western Sydney Airport as they move closer to opening that particular airport. So phase one includes one runway and a terminal complex, and then there are additional phases that will see multiple runways and more terminal complexes opened up.
Yeah, I know nothing about Western Sydney International Airport, which apparently will have a code of WSI, I guess, which doesn't yet exist in the system. But if I see a headline that says first jet lands at new airport, and it's a 737-700 aerial firefighting aircraft, like I'm going to talk about that because that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think That's an excellent threshold to meet.
It's way out there to Western Sydney International Airport.
It's west.
Yeah, it's west. I hope it doesn't come one of those airports that has international in the name and doesn't actually end up with any international flights. Like I actually know nothing about this, and I need to go research. Like I don't think they're replacing Sydney Airport because that would be insane.
Eventually, that's kind of what'll happen.
Yeah,
eventually.
All right.
Long
So hey,
time from now.
if this becomes the real new Sydney, Australia airport, hey, first jet aircraft landing there is actually kind of a big deal.
So
or
we
don't
really have a transition for this now.
Well,
because we did
earlier.
Before.
We used it. I don't even remember what it was now.
Fell
Something
through the
about
cracks.
close. Fell through the cracks. See, that's why we play off each other so well. What happened?
So
because I've never heard of this before.
This happened 2 weeks ago, and it's just kind of coming out this week. But you know how they make an announcement all the time that says if you drop your phone, don't try and get it. Tell a crew member.
Well, if you drop it in the seat, don't move the seat because the mechanical bits of the seat could crush the phone and make.
And then you've got a battery fire on your hand. But what happens if you say drop your laptop and it falls down the sidewall of the plane and ends up in the cargo area?
That is a thing I did not know was possible. And you know what? And yet, man, it must have been a MacBook Air because that's a really thin space, I assume, to drop.
I have no idea how.
I've never noticed it before, but apparently there's a slot wide enough for a laptop of some size to drop from the passenger cabin through the floor of the cabin and into the cargo hold, that's wild. But apparently that is actually something that happened on a flight out of Dulles, and they went back to Dulles almost 3 hours later after reaching the Atlantic Ocean west or east of Boston. Wow. Okay, I would have believed it if it was a phone, but a laptop. I guess if you fold a laptop and it's a really thin laptop and you're really unlucky, that could happen. But can you imagine walking up to a flight attendant and be like, you're never going to believe what happened? So I was typing an email and suddenly
it was gone.
It's in the cargo. I wouldn't even think that's possible. I would have just thought like, it's down on the floor somewhere and I can't find it because it's dark. It must be under the seat. It never would have even occurred to me that it would be physically possible for my laptop to disappear out of the cabin entirely into the cargo hold. Like, really?
Part of the issue, the big issue here was that the area that the laptop fell into was outside of the scope of the fire suppression system. So it became a possible safety issue where, if something had happened, they wouldn't necessarily have been able to put out a fire with the suppression system.
That's just
so
wild.
Yeah. So a little bit of bizarre news to end this particular episode. This has been episode 343 of AvTalk. I am Ian Petchnick, here as always with
Jason Rabinowitz. Thanks for listening.